Hey guys, I've been working on this week's project for some time, partly just because a lot of the materials got delayed in shipping, which led to me moving around all sorts of plans to compensate. So I'm making a wreath to celebrate and act as a one-off present for my partner's sister's wedding. Say that 3 times fast. Yes, you heard that right. I suppose that kind of makes it a commission, except nobody asked for it and it's a surprise. Self-commissioned? Jeez, I haven't even started this project yet and it's already driving me insane. Maybe I should go with self-committed. Ah well, no point in procrastinating any longer than I already have. Let's get into it. Okay, so I used quite a few materials for this project, and as I had to wait for some to arrive in the post, I can't show them all up front here on screen. The absolute first thing I needed so that I could get started though was the blank polystyrene wreath. It's a full-sized round wreath, and I also had this blue and pink cotton yarn, which are the bridal party colours. As I mentioned, I did use lots of other materials and I'll show those as we come to them, but rest assured I've included a list of everything I used in the description box below. To begin with, I covered the wreath using both the blue and pink yarns. I wanted one half in blue and the other in pink. So to start, I crocheted enough rows to go around the donut section of the wreath, and then I extended those rows until I was roughly halfway. At that point, I switched colours, and it's much easier to crochet this piece flat because you can just power through and build up the rows very quickly, even more so if you're using a double crochet stitch. I chose to use the half double crochet stitch, however, as I didn't want there to be a lot of visible gaps between the yarn, as the underlying white polystyrene would show through. You can of course paint the polystyrene base first, but that really works best for single colours, as trying to keep the colour change matched would be hard to manage, as the cover inevitably shifts while you're working with it and it will slide around as well. I wasn't sure how this would end up, so I chose to leave it unpainted. It was just the safest choice. After I reached the right size to cover the entire wreath, I joined the 2 ends to make it into one seamless piece. I then sewed the seam shut with both the pink and the blue yarn respectively to really make the seam invisible. With that finished, I put the wreath aside for a couple of weeks. As it turned out, I was still waiting for stuff to arrive in the post, but you know, it was time to move on to making the bride. The shape and size of the wreath didn't leave me with much space to work with, so I needed to make chibi sized amigurumi. To start off, I made the most adorable tiny legs. Oh, they're so cute. I chose to use a pale skin tone and white here, and just omit the shoes since they won't be visible anyway. I joined the legs and then worked my way up the tiny torso, which was only a few rounds. I stuffed the legs lightly and added some wire because I'll be using this wire to attach the figures onto the wreath by jabbing it into the polystyrene. That's violent. Oh dear. Anyway, I did this by cutting a long enough piece of wire and inserting it through both legs. I then bent the ends of the wire to stop the obvious from happening. What's that, you ask? Why, to stop you being an unexpected pincushion, of course. Now ask me how I know. I'll wait. Ow. Ow. Oh my god, why? Yeah. In any case, you get to learn from my mistakes and bend those sharp ends out of the way. Next, I went back to the waistline and crocheted the skirt. I wanted to do layers initially, but due to the space I was working with and the size, she would just have been drowned in them. So instead, I kept it as one full skirt layer. However, I did crochet the skirt into a point at the front to give the illusion of a corset. Moving on, I crocheted some tiny arms off camera and switched yarn colour to join the arms onto the rest of the body. I then also surface crocheted around the bust line to neaten up that edge. Now, white yarn is a pain and my lights make it near impossible to see, so I'll turn off the key light so that you can see a bit better. From here on, I just needed to finish up the head, and I installed some 4mm safety eyes before closing it up, and I also added some ears onto the sides. She's so cute, bold but still cute. With the bust line finished and the skirt finished as well, I moved on to the bling process. I will be coming back to the dress, but I needed to add the jewellery first. I chose to add the jewellery on now because I would be sewing and there was a risk I'd knock things out of place. So with that in mind, I have these two sizes of Diamante chain. The larger one seemed a bit oversized for the scale I'm working with, so I went with the smaller one. I cut it into suitable lengths for a tennis bracelet and some earrings. I first tried brute forcing it with my wire cutters, which in my defense should have worked. They are larger and stronger, so therefore more powerful, right? Nope. Turns out that's incorrect. The small cutters just went through like butter. To be fair, they are jewellery cutters. There's a lesson in there somewhere. With my pieces ready, I used some invisible thread and sewed the tennis bracelet onto her little right wrist and the earrings onto the ears. Obviously. Where would I put the earrings? I went to work on her hair with a light-ish brown colour. I was initially going to do an updo, but I changed my mind and went with a simple low ponytail and some loose strands at the front to roll down the side of the face. I then sewed the hair in place and secured the strand of hair at the front into place. Going back to the dress, I broke out my hotfix wand and using some 2mm hotfix gems, I went ahead and added gems onto the bodice of the dress. This took a hot minute. I also used a single 3mm gem and hot fixed that onto the left hand to represent a diamond ring. After completing the dress, I moved on to the crown and veil. For the crown, I began with 2 pieces of wire in different sizes. The thicker gauge wire was to anchor the beads, and the thinner gauge wire was for threading the beads, which I would then use to wrap around the main frame. Oh my god, I'm going insane. I started off with shaping the thicker wire into a semicircle, and then using the thinner wire I wrapped the beads onto the frame to make the crown. I don't think I can explain it better than that, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I then folded and cut some white tulle and pleated one end. Using some invisible thread again, I sewed it onto the crown. Next, I cut the veil to size and along the fold to get 2 layers. A nice thing about doing it this way is that the top layer can then either be brought forward to cover the face or left hanging behind to increase the volume. So then I finally secured the crown and veil onto the head of the bride, and with that she is all done and dusted. Okay, so that turned out not to be entirely true, because I went back to her a couple of days later and decided that she was missing one integral part of the outfit, and obviously that would be the bouquet. So I found this in my haberdashery stash and I sewed it onto her left arm, making sure not to hide the diamond ring. So yeah, there we go. I think the more you stare at something, the more you find things to add. So at this point I just stopped, and she was definitely done this time. For the groom, I started the same way as I did for the bride, only I used black yarn instead of white. I then also gave him a little tie and I crocheted a jacket for him with coattails. I must admit, the coattails are just my favourite part, and I wasn't sure at first, and when my partner suggested it, I rolled my eyes at the extra work because I did have it in mind, but I was just going to leave it at that. But you know what, I'm here to say sorry. It turned out great and I love it now. It was well worth the extra half an hour. I also added the little handkerchief for the front pocket to complete the look. Okay, let's just take a minute here to give the grooms out there their time in the limelight, because at the end of the day, did you think this was about you? Just one paragraph, but you know what, most of it was covered in the bride and it's just repetitive. So you only get a paragraph. That's it for you. So with the bride and groom complete, it's back to the decorative elements of the wreath. I wanted to decorate each side with the opposite colour, but first things first, I had to make out the positions of the chibigurumis, I'm calling them. I cut some wire, bent the ends inwards and pushed them into the polystyrene to mark their places. I mainly did this so that I wouldn't sew over where they would be standing and then have to take it apart again if I sewed something in the wrong place. So this is just for me to keep a mental note of where everything is going to go. So you know when I mentioned that I wanted to decorate each side with the opposite colour? Well, that went out the window. But anyway, again, reasons. The postal system let me down. But with my markers in place, I used some of this silver Diamante ribbon and spiraled it around the wreath. Once I was happy with the positioning, I sewed it into place. I did the same for the rose gold ribbon and sewed that into place. Next, I used some of the leftover appliques I had from my Easter egg project and sewed them on too. Some of the flowers I had ordered either turned out to be too dark or too light, or in one case just the wrong colour altogether. So I got tired of playing guessing games with images that may appear a different colour online due to different monitors, and stuck with the flowers I had bought from my local haberdashery. So when I had all the embellishments in place, I got out my hotfix wand again, changed the nib size and hotfixed some gems into the empty spaces on the flowers. And of course I added some gems onto the smaller flowers in the center of the blue side, so the blue gems for the blue side and the pink gems for the pink side. Incidentally, I then also added some extra gems to fill out some of the more sparse areas, so the crochet only areas. And incidentally, there's actually a little secret in here. Well, it's not going to be a secret now because they might see, if they watch this video, will know that on each side there is exactly 28 gems, pink gems, on the crochet surfaces, not on the flowers. And on the blue side, there's 28 gems to signify the day of the wedding, and 6 larger clear gems to signify the month of June. Oh my god, this has been a long project, but we are nearly there, guys. This is the final stretch. Bless you for sticking with it so far. So, although the wreath is finished, I still wanted to add a date tag with their names on it as well. However, seeing as the wedding is tomorrow and this is a surprise, I didn't get their permission to show their names on the interwebs. So, in respect to that, this next part will be censored. Well, actually, I did do all of this off camera, so this is just a quick replay of what went down. I printed their names and the date on a vinyl sticker sheet, and then I transferred that onto the heart-shaped acrylic blank. I made sure there were no bubbles under the vinyl, then sealed it all with a coat of UV resin. Next, I added a tiny bit of shimmering glitter to some more UV resin and coated the other side with it. Next, I brought out my Pebeo paints. If you don't know, I will link all of this below in the description box. But if you don't know, the paints dry with an effect on them. So I used 2 different kinds. But anyway, that was done. And then I had to coat it with some resin to cure it. I then also added a doming coat to the name side with a tiny bit of shimmering glitter just to add that extra sparkle. I then left it all to cure for a while before finally attaching that. So anyway, as I mentioned, because it's going to be censored, I'm not going to include it in the beauty shots, or if I do, it will be wrapped. For the final finishing touch, I found the natural balancing point of the wreath and added a little crochet tag so that it can be properly hung up. So guys, while you watch me speed through crocheting the little tag and say my goodbyes before this wreath heads off to its new forever home, I'd just like to say thank you for watching, and of course if you'd like to see more, then please like, share, comment and even consider subscribing. If you are feeling generous, then also please consider buying me a cup of coffee on Ko-fi. The link to my Ko-fi page will be included in the description box below, and any and all donations will be greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to hit that bell button to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Anyway, please enjoy these tagless but otherwise matrimonial beauty shots, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!